Maybe I should work on that. In all seriousness, though, it's 2020, and it is time to start thinking about working on some of the beasts that reside within, especially because there is a new acquisition hopefully on the way from Los Angeles in about a week's time, so it'd be nice to be able to clean this bay up. Few things I've got to do before I can get the O2 onto the lift here, or at least things I should do. I'm going to pull the ring and pinion set out of this E34 diff from that super cheapo E34. And then I'm going to throw the case and cover and stuff like that in the trash. I don't really have any use or desire for it. Put the Getrick 260, the axle, shifter, and drive shaft into the Model S to bring those home. And then I should have sufficient room to roll the O2 back. I just want to get back under it and sort of remind myself where we are with it. But I think the next step I'm going to be working on with it is primarily going to be fuel system related. So I do have an E21 320i fuel pump in the tank now, which has a feed and a return. However, although there is one feed line, it is very, very thin. It is made of plastic that's over 50 years old for the most part, and it's overall pretty sketchy. So I'm planning to run most of this in AN, 3S hardline, or new ethanol-resistant hose. But either way, I think that diff's got oil in it, so I gotta find a pan or something, crack that rear case open, and get her done. Well, best solution I could think of, since buckets, I don't know, I'm gonna be draining it into a bucket with a funnel probably. Get it up here. That way at least I've got enough flexibility to drain straight down and then maybe over some time as well. Just in case I decide to let this drain for over a day, make sure it's bone dry. Anyway, time to rip the cover off and make sure I've got adequate facilities down here to capture that gear oil. Well, the oil looks nice and clean. It's a good start. So here's the top of the tank in the O2. Right now, all we have is level sending, which we can adapt to this E30 sender. Luckily, I do believe that does work. So we have output, input, and power for the pump. I do have an electrical pigtail for this down here somewhere, scavenged from one of my E30 parts cars. I do have to, unfortunately, get these inlets and outlets through some bulkhead fittings somewhere underneath the car. So I'm actually going to snap a photo right now so I have a reference point when I'm under the car. And I'm going to be using -6AN the whole way, if I can. There's an EFI, I think it's a Phytech kit. Pretty good stuff. And I've got bulkhead, hose ends, and then I believe there's a special kind of fitting. One of these, oh yes, these are actually for hardline. So I'll be able to terminate hardline as well. So here we are under the car, and it's actually looking like the best place to put it is probably just in advance of this fuel tank retention bolt. I think there's enough room to get 2 -6 bulkhead fittings in there. And then I should be able to run those looped under and pin them to the car throughout the trunk floor and hopefully all the way down. I'm likely going to want to come into the trans tunnel because the car is at its lowest point right here, and it looks like occasionally it has been scraping on the ground. So not really a great option, but it looks like the brake lines and the parking brake cables are there. So curve around, I guess, and see what we can do. So here's a rough bend of a fuel line. I'm gonna see if I have enough coil to do a second one. Fingers crossed. So 25 feet was enough. These are the rough bends I've got taped together. I'm gonna mark return and feed on them, fish them into the car, and see what modifications we need before I start getting some clips and considering actually mounting some hardline to this car, at which time I will be putting the fuel fittings on the hose or hardline. A lot easier to do when the line's off the car. So that is what I had left from the 25 feet. And I'll just so you have a rough idea of what we're looking at. I'll go across footwell here. It's sitting on the bearing, but it will be anchored here, 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 all the way back, cross over the cable brake line. I'll have to bend them up a little bit more here to go over the subframe, and we'll terminate to rubber right about here. So these fittings are actually pretty simple. You just wind them all the way open. Easier with two hands. You slide the gland on first, then you slide on the little brass collet. Then position the fine thread down, cinch it up, tighten it down, and you're good. And boom goes the dynamite. Sexy, sexy. So there we have it. AN terminated hard lines. So I'm gonna have to find a better way to affix the hold downs to this copper nickel hard line. And then I'm probably gonna have to cut really small chunks of 3/8 hose and slice it just as kind of a dampener, because there is a little bit of back and forth. These actually tuck up really nice against the shell when they're all in place. I have the -6 ends just sitting against the exhaust right now, so that's why it looks kind of like turds, but should be decent enough. Got two 90-degree fittings sitting on here, aiming this way, and then hopefully we'll go through with bulkheads right here. I'm learning right now that I don't have step drill bits here, so unfortunately, how project cars go, I'm making a shopping list, and I'd rather do it more correct than kind of limp it along. So that will probably stop me on that tonight. I do actually have, wow, with this focus, new wheel cylinders, which are not for a 67 1600. They are actually for a 68 1600, and I'm worried that they may not fit, but these have intact bleeders, so having working rear brakes might be possible. Also, I think my clutch master cylinder is screwed. So I bought a new one of these. These are ridiculously expensive. And then I don't remember why, but I bought rubber. Oh, right, no, it's because these are swollen shut, I think. That was my speculation. They're super old, and I'm guessing that they are not allowing fluid to pass correctly. So that is gonna get replaced. These actually look a little on the long side, but I think they'll work. So, I don't know, I'm gonna grab a beer. Phone's not doing a good job of focusing today. Yeah, I'm gonna grab a beer, and I'll figure something else out after that. If I'm gonna run a boost pump on this car, this is actually the feed line right here. Wow, I'm very sorry about the focus. I could consider, I don't know, there's no real good spot, and this car is so tiny. I could consider running it in the trunk as well, just to kind of maintain the wiring, keep it a little cleaner. But you can see there's a decent amount of motion in there, so I'm gonna have to take care of that one way or another. But yeah, it feels good actually, like working on this car a teeny tiny little bit today. Yeah, the diff looks pretty good inside. I'm gonna let this thing keep draining. Just pulled the cover off, and a little bit more was just pent up in there. So, couple little teensy tiny metal shavings potentially, but honestly, considering everything, like this thing's age and how not well it was likely treated, looks like all the damage is on the spider gears anyway. Lots of one wheel peel. I'll probably pull it apart either later or next time I'm down here, but just like that E30 diff that I showed you guys a while ago, It's basically just take a pry bar and a hammer and pound out center shafts. I mean, you can see them, they're just right in there. They're not circlipped on the outside. They do have a little circlip in the middle. Get both those out, then you can pull these bearing carriers and seals out. And then the entire ring carrier comes out with the planets and everything. And you can unbolt the ring gear. The input gear is pretty gross on this thing, but you can see there is a hex nut shaped thing in there. All you gotta do is rip that thing off with an impact and give it a few stabs at the screwdriver, and the whole pinion will come right out too. God, it reeks like gear oil. Super nasty. But yeah, that's the plan. I just want to save the gear set. Then I'll probably keep the cover too. I doubt it's worth anything, but you know, it's at least aluminum, and I'll double check before I throw it away. So yeah, there's the inside of an open E34 diff. Large case, 373. Well, everything's packed in like sardines this winter. And now I actually have the luxury of reclaiming a couple of spots just to move around a little bit better. So I'm going to move the AMG and the M5 over to our second unit. That's right, I just got the second one of these things. So once I figure out where I put my opener, there it is. Yeah, let's do this. Gotta pop the garage door. Oh, jeez. They kind of plowed me in down here. So here we are, and I'm actually going to be parking this thing just inside the garage there. So let's see if this thing works. Nice. I can get closer than that. Now this thing does not have parking sensors. Oh, there's the sheetrock. Oops. This thing is longer than I thought it was. That's not ideal. Well, maybe for now I'll park it in a better spot. This thing sounds good in here. I love garages that are big enough to drive inside. Okay. Now I just have to reconnect the charger. And I can go get probably the M5. So anyway, here is Unit 2. Kind of give you a sense of space and scale here. So that is an absolutely massive S-Class. Did come with a 4-post with airlocks, which is kind of cool. Not exactly sure what that cord is hanging down. I feel like that's power for the lift, but it doesn't appear to be. think that's an 18-foot garage door, man door, another man door. There's actually a deck out here, but I can't get to it yet, so I'll have to do some work there. Yeah, certainly no frills, but 40 by 40 by 20 feet high. So we got plans. When I drove the Merc down there, I forgot that I had to walk back. Oh, I'm cold. So in just a minute, I am going to start up the M5 and we'll shove that down there too. I'm excited. It'll give me the opportunity to be able to clean the floor for the first time in some time. A little more breathing room for the O2. And potentially I have room to de-sardine these guys. I'd actually love to move the SL over there as well. But maybe I'll just throw the 1M. I don't know, I kind of like looking at all these cars, so there's a possibility I'll just leave it with the M5. The space is quite a bit better even just right now, so. Anyway, I gotta warm up. Whew. Quite the ice berm here, just trying not to damage my car. Also trying to close the garage door at the same time. Say that looks reasonable. Cool. That'll work. I'm not walking back this time. I brought the scooter. So, I've got my feed and return. It's not perfect. I'm gonna do a little bit more bending just to try to make it look as nice as I can, but it's not terrible. Plenty of clearance between the tubes and the exhaust. And it doesn't actually hit anything, which is nice. So that's where we are right now. Next step's gonna be making the 2 holes right here for the bulkhead fittings. It's kind of a shame to make big holes in a little car like this, but you gotta do what you gotta do for fuel injection. All right, so that's gonna be the start of it. I'm gonna go back down to trunk level now and put the top end of those bulkhead connectors on. They're just dangling there right now. Should look pretty good though. Still have some more tightening to do. This one was a little bit tighter in the hole, so I had to thread it with the actual fitting. So again, that one will take a little bit more work just to level out. The rear one's perfect. Not exactly sure which one I'll use for feed and return yet. I'm thinking, yeah, that doesn't really much matter. But I will have to get this retainer down just a little bit further to get a -6 onto that thing and sealed properly. Luckily, the mating surface itself looks perfect. So even though the fitting got a little torched, it's not terrible. Should easily be able to make that work. But we're getting closer. One thing I kind of forgot about was I do have to run wiring for the pump. At least it's just kind of one wire. I mean, fuel pump power We can use ground back here. Confident enough in the structure of the car to use it as a chassis ground. But yeah, I'm super glad to not be using this old plastic fuel feed for the carb. I probably could have used it for a return, but if I was running one line, it made sense to run two. So yeah, I think this will be the feed and this will be the return. So I believe that's the return, that's the feed. I'll be able to run the feed out here, loop it around and back in, and the return I should be able to just shoot right there. So that should work. And the bottom side, that should be good too. Nice short distances. I've got feed here, which is going there. Then I'll be able to loop the return out underneath. So this is great. I'm really happy with this. In the front, I'll just throw two hoses right up into the engine bay. I'm not happy with how close these are to the exhaust. That's only a couple inches away. I don't think it'll be a problem. It certainly won't be a problem for the metal, but I don't want to boil fuel, and I really don't want to hurt the fuel hoses. So I'll see if I have any stainless braided left. I think that stuff handles heat a little bit better. Worst case, I can have a heat shield fabricated and bolted on here or something like that, but I am trying to avoid everything unnecessary that I possibly can.